The map of Jain cosmology અને આખો Jain ધર્મ આપણો is in this, and we are all living in this. Now this whole system, Ketan Bhai brought a nice model last week, and basically Shila is at the top, there is Devlok here, there is middle level here, which is where we all live, and this is obviously Naraklok, and this is Akhu called Lokakash, which is this whole shape, okay, which is basically this shape. Yeah, so this is the Jain cosmology. So I wanted to put it in perspective as to why we are doing this. Sorry, I'll keep on crossing this, so you probably. Now these are the Shad Dravyas, okay. So the whole thing is Dravya. Dravya means anything which is a molecule or anything which is a form of matter is called Dravya. So there is Jeev, which is conscious and living, and Ajiv, which is non-living and unconscious. Okay. Now Ajiv is split into Pudgal. Pudgal is actually the tiniest atom or proton or neutron or quark or whatever, string or whatever else science can come up with. That is what a Pudgal is. Dharma Ashtikai, it's actually called Dharma Ashtikai. Dharma Ashtikai means dharma which allows something to move from A to B. That is called Dharma Ashtikai. A Dharma Ashtikai is something which allows something to be stationary. Akash is basically the space, which is that image of that Lokakash that I showed you. Now there is Akash and there is Lokakash and there is Alokakash. I'll explain that to you. And then there is Kal, which is time. Okay. Now the time here is not, as Rajiv explained to you, not in the sense that we know it, as in, yesterday was yesterday, today is today, and tomorrow is tomorrow, and it's 8:30 now, and it will be after half an hour it will be 9 o'clock. That this time doesn't work that way. But I just wanted you to understand. So these are called the Shad Dravyas. Yeah. Any questions? So now this is really tiny. I think when I was doing this table, I must have. Anyway, so right. So there is Dharmashtikai, which is eternal. I think Ketan Bhai last week explained it very nicely when he talked about the magnitude of time, magnitude of space, the way infinity works, the way innumerability works, and the way how things are divided. And he did that whole table, which was very cleverly done. So you have Dharmashtikai, which is eternal. It has no form, color, or taste. It doesn't move. Dharmashtikai itself doesn't move. It's like it's just there. It only allows something to happen within itself. And I will go to that particular verse later. Then Pradesh or particles, these are the tiniest particles. So now there are two things that you need to be very clear about. First of all is what we call Pudgal. And the second thing is called Pradesh. Pradesh is a space point. Okay? It's a point in space which is anywhere. Whereas Pudgal is actually matter. It is actually physical. I mean, you can't see it, but it has a physical existence. Whereas Pradesh is a space point. Okay? So Dharmashtikai has got innumerable. Adharmashtikai is again innumerable, and again it is the same as Dharmashtikai. Akashtikai is again eternal. So all these things have come from time immemorial. There was never a time when this thing, that Big Bang thing, happened, according to Jain theory. And even I think to some extent, even scientists are rethinking the Big Bang theory. So, and again it is innumerable. Then Pudgal Ashtikai, okay, that is eternal, yes. It has got form, color, taste, yes, it can be grasped through the senses. Movement, yes, it does move. And it could be innumerable, and it could also be infinite, okay? And a Kal is again eternal, yes, it has no form or color, movement, it's not applicable to Kal. Time is a totally different animal altogether. And a Pradesh, it's infinite. Kal is infinite, it just is, there's no beginning, there's no end to Kal. Jivashtikai is, yes, eternal. Okay. Jivashtikai means the soul. It has no form, taste, or color. It does move, and it is innumerable. Okay. In fact, it is actually infinite. There are infinite jivs. So, the first verse, which is where Rajiv Bhai stopped the other one. So, it is Sankhye Asankhyeschcha Pudgalanam. So, Rajiv Bhai talked about the quantities before. Here we are talking about Pudgal. Okay? So, Pudgal has numerable, innumerable, and infinite space points. Now, I'm going to explain to you how space points work. So, for example, anywhere you stand here, there is something which exists. Am I right? It's not that there is nothing. Say here. Do you think there's anything? There is something, isn't there? There is some sort of air, oxygen, whatever molecules, biological molecules, they are there. They occupy a space point. Now, they exist in an area. There is a certain area that they occupy. That is a space point. Now, that space point, that Pradesh, is so tiny that even if you split it and you split it and you split it and you split it and you split it infinitely, there will still be a moment where it will not be possible to subdivide it any further. And that is what a Pradesh is. Okay? Now, if I look at the Western science, they first looked at the atom, and they said the atom is it is the smallest form of matter. Then they split up the atom into protons and neutrons, and they said that's the smallest one. Then they came up with the theory that no, there are quarks, which are the smallest form of matter. Now they have come up with string theory, and they're still postulating that maybe there is even something more finer than string theory. And then there is this talk about dark matter, which exists in space, and there's all kinds of things that science is, because even science it still is discovering. But this was postulated by Mahavir Swami 2,600 years ago. So this is our Jain, it's a mixture of cosmology and our Akhuj explanation of this Nav Tattva. So they matter, which is Pudgal. Okay, so we are all made up of matter. Everything that we have, anything, this is made up of matter. Everything you see around you is made up of matter. Matter itself can be divided until there's a point where you cannot divide matter. So what it says is that matter or Pudgal has numerable, innumerable, and infinite space points. So itself matter has space points inside, and it has got millions of them. The one difference between Pudgal and other substances of non-living is that Pradesh of Pudgal can be separated from the aggregate, but the Pradeshis of the other four substances cannot. So Pudgal is matter, it can be separated. So for example, if you were to do this, will you get dead skin cells coming off? Yeah, they will come off. Similarly, it can be separated. When we all die, we get cremated, our body becomes ashes. The ashes get spread out somewhere and then they disappear. So it can be split up, it can be separated. No other Dharmashtikai, Adharmashtikai, Akash, you cannot separate it. It just stays there intact. Okay, this is something that you need to understand. If you're not clear, you please stop me and ask me questions. Yeah. So the aggregate is not a definite form. So whatever form that we have, for example, you have some people are big, some people are small, some people are tiny. For example, when children are born, they are like this tiny, and then they grow, and they become like giants like us. So the aggregate is not a definite form, as it can change. One cluster of Pudgals can be made of numerable, innumerable, infinite Pradesh or space points. Yes, yeah, so it can be millions of space points within one Pudgal. Dharma and Adharma occupy the entire Lokakash. However, Pudgal can occupy a Pradesh, some occupy a portion, some can occupy the entire Lokakash. Okay? So when I say Pudgal, means as a body or as a living, as an entity, it can occupy a tiny bit of space here, it can occupy this whole table, it can occupy this whole room, it can occupy this whole area, it can occupy the entire universe. Okay, how can it do that? So why are you not asking me that question?
Yes. But then two particles of Pudgal cannot occupy the same space.
They can. So I'll explain that to you, how that works. So first of all, I'm talking about this expansion, okay? So Pudgals can aggregate, they get together and they aggregate and they get bigger until they occupy the holes. And how does that happen? When you reach the state of Kevalgnan, your consciousness, which is again Pudgal, becomes so vast that it can occupy the entire universe. It can see right into moksha and it can see right into the hells at the bottom. So this is how the expansion works. So it's not a physical expansion in the sense that your body doesn't. So one other thing that you need to remember, whatever you are doing at the moment, you're breathing, that is Pudgal. Your body is Pudgal. Your mind is Pudgal. The thoughts in the mind are Pudgal. Everything that is working within you is Pudgal. It's matter. Some of it is very ephemeral, or you cannot see it. Some of it is physically, you can see it. You can see mind through mind waves, or you can see through energy waves, but you cannot see it like the way we see a body. But that doesn't mean that is not matter. So when your consciousness expands, when you become Kevalgnan, it can reach right up to the top of the universe and to the bottom of the universe.
How does Jainism define consciousness then?
Jainism defines consciousness as this elevated state where you are still in an embodied state. Remember that. You have not reached moksha yet. You are in a Kevalgnan state. It defines your consciousness as in it defines it as an expansion of your awareness.
So what's the relationship between consciousness and the soul then?
So there is a relationship in the sense that the soul itself experiences the consciousness. The soul exists as a soul. It already has its qualities. What happens with consciousness is that when all these shackles fall away, the full extent of the soul is revealed. When that is revealed, the soul is able to then expand itself, its awareness, because up till then its awareness was limited because of the shackles. As soon as the shackles fall away, it expands its awareness to cover the whole universe. So it's awareness of the soul, which is what we are talking about as consciousness.
But I thought then the soul is not Pudgal, so then how can its awareness be Pudgal?
The soul is Pudgal. The soul is also made of matter, except that it is so subtle you can't see it.
But it can't be subdivided.
The soul can't be subdivided, yes, but the soul is still made up of Pudgal. The soul can contract in size and the soul can expand in size.
I thought soul was Jiv.
Yeah.
Pudgal is a Jiv.
Yeah. No. So Pudgal is Ajiv, yes, but the soul is also made up of matter. It is also made up of these tiny particles, which they call it as an aggregate. It's made up of matter, but it can never be split. It can never be subdivided. It can never be. It is always intact.
It's a different kind of matter.
Yeah.
The Pudgal in material things.
Okay.
Yeah, it's matter, but it's a different kind of matter.
So are you clear, or are you still confused?
I'm confused.
Okay, how do I bend your mind through it then?
No, for me, it's in my head, Pudgal is matter.
And how would you define matter as?
As atoms, molecules, larger.
So what do you think a soul is made up of?
I don't know.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So soul is also made up of matter. It is of a form. It is called dravya.
Yeah.
Okay, dravya is something which is very unique in its qualities, and that is why it's called Jeev. It's not dead, which is Ajeev. Okay, Ajeev has got Pudgals, but soul also has Pudgals.
Yeah. what I'm confused about is the non-soul Pudgal that we're talking about. If it's a finite thing, as in like we're saying atoms, molecules, right? How can two Pudgal occupy the same space?
Oh, that I will explain to you.
Right.
So the Pudgals, so what happens with the Pudgals? So for example, it's very difficult for me to, for example, let me take this, okay?
Yeah.
So this is a space point, okay? The atoms one atom can occupy it, another atom on top of it can occupy, a third one on top of it can occupy, because the atoms are of such a quality, they are so subtle that there is a certain quality to them that they will not obstruct. You know, like our physical bodies will obstruct. So for example, if I want to sit where she is sitting, then she's an obstruction for me, unless I plonk myself on top of her. What happens with atoms here is that they will occupy, but they are they are so subtle and they are so malleable that something can sit on top of them and another thing can sit on top of them and another thing can sit on top of them. I don't know if you remember when Rajiv Bhai did his first lecture, he had that circle, and then he moved that circle and there was another circle behind it and there was a third circle behind it and a fourth circle behind it. So this is how the atoms occupy space points.
And we know this already because window chair in your house, right? There's a whole hard piece of window, isn't there? But light, which is a particle, in many ways, as a photon, goes straight through it.
Is it, that's
It's a different thing.
that's a different thing.
No.
He's asking.
Why? This is
Because there's space. If you think light is a particle, the only way you can think about it is there's a space within the molecules of the glass pane that allows light to go through.
Mhm.
i.e. there's a space there which is not occupied by the glass,
right,
so the light can go through that.
right.
Right?
Yeah.
Now, if you take that logically forward, if you say that atoms can occupy the same space, right? A molecule which is made of two atoms can do the same as well, right? Then a substance that's made of two molecules should be able to
So
do the
there
same.
is a difference
Then if you
between,
do
so
actually
there is a
bring a gross
difference,
thing.
yeah, you're right, absolutely.
Right?
So there is a difference between a gross body
Yeah.
and there was a subtle body.
Yeah, yeah.
So gross body is us,
Right.
yeah? But apart from us, there are millions of subtle bodies. So for example, if you take an amoeba, okay? And you take an amoeba and you put it in a place, and then you put another amoeba next to it, and a third amoeba next to it, and a fourth amoeba next to it. They will all occupy the same space, they will expand in their own way, but they will never intermingle.
Yeah.
You know, because they will have their own unique qualities which they will have, and they will therefore not intermingle.
No, but they'll be occupying different spaces.
No, but they will still. So you can. So I'm only giving you that example because you see the way Raj you are thinking is that you are thinking in the physical world, the
Yes,
world we live
exactly.
in.
Yeah.
Yeah. Whereas the world that I'm talking about is a world which is so subtle that it is not even visible for me to prove it. It is not visible for anyone to prove.
No, but what I'm trying to think about is all of us are made of that subtle world that you're talking about.
Yeah. So we are gross
Right?
bodies.
So if we're made of those subtle particles, then why don't we have the same properties of the certain particle, subtle particle?
We do.
If-
So
where does it
individual
stop?
individual Pudgals within us
Yes.
are occupying space points. But because, so I'm going to come to that, but because of the grossness of our body, it can only occupy a certain amount of space because
Yeah.
we are not that subtle, okay?
Yeah.
But there are infinite number of atoms out there which are sort of floating around in different clusters or whatever. They are so subtle that they can actually occupy one space point and occupy another space point on the top, which is why although the whole space, the whole Lokakash has got innumerable space points, the number of atoms occupying the Pudgals are infinite.
Then we shouldn't use the word atom. I think
Yeah.
that's the confusion.
That's probably,
Yeah.
you're right.
Ah, but
the subtlety is beyond.
Yeah, it's
the
beyond
atom.
atoms. So, I can only talk to you because
Yeah.
we are all educated in a Western sort of philosophical, Western
Sure.
science perspective. Personally, I never look at what Western scientists say, because to me, they are still on the voyage of discovery. I think our people had discovered this much earlier. And therefore, I tend to not justify it. But I'm only trying to explain to you that this is how the whole science of Jainism works. Okay, there are these particles which are so tiny and they are so subtle that they are not, they call them Pudgal. Now, Pudgal, there is no definition in West for a Pudgal. As I said, it could be string theory, quarks. I do not know. They are still discovering what is the tiniest particle. Dark matter, I do not know. Okay? So, it can occupy, but in our gross bodies, it cannot. But in the subtle bodies, so for example, Atma che, okay, so when you go to Siddhshila, now Siddhshilama, they say that Anant Atmas are there. They are already, ketla Anant Siddh Pami gya che, and they are all occupying. But their bodies become 1/3 of the size of the normal. I mean, their Atmas become 1/3 the size of the normal. So they occupy 1/3 of the body. But they are so subtle, okay, another one can park itself on them, another one can park itself, another, because the space, if you look at that map, there's only a little limited space of Siddhshila. Yet there is this explanation, because they are so subtle, they can occupy one on top. So it's like doing a piece of Lego and you keep on building bricks on top of each other and you go right to, I don't know, wherever, to the moon, say. But the space you are all still occupying is a little square or rectangular space which is there. But you fitted maybe trillions of them. This is how this science is.
I think it's fascinating because you can think about it, that the subtle form of particle as light, where you have this weird dualism, light is a particle, so it must be Pudgal,
It is Pudgal.
right? But it's a wave.
Yeah, but it's still Pudgal.
Pudgal. So
How
in
it
that
moves
sense,
is irrelevant.
Yeah. No, but you can have two light particles occupying the same
Yeah,
space.
absolutely, yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, Rajesh, sorry.
Could we say that the subtlest of the subtlest Pudgal is smaller than a single space point? Would it be?
No. So they never defined, so what they say is that the space point is also indivisible, and they say a Pudgal is also indivisible.
Yeah.
But what they say is that a Pudgal can occupy in a space point, it can be like infinite, it can be numerable, or it can be innumerable.
Yeah. No, so what I'm saying is, if you take it down right to
The tiniest.
tiniest Pudgal, would it occupy less than a single space point, if ever there's something like that?
Yeah, perhaps, yeah.
And therefore we can say that those two tiniest could actually, two of those small, for example, an argument say, could occupy one space point.
So what they say is Sankhye asankhyaschcha Pudgalam. So here this particular verse is only describing that the Pudgals are numerable, innumerable, and infinite. Okay, I just elaborated on this because I thought that it's very important from a Western point of view that you understand how these things work. And the reason why is, incidentally, I know you're probably thinking debate it's not even relevant to our lives, but it is relevant because when we come to do the chapters after that, especially the karma theory, these things become very relevant. So that's why you need to understand. But according to Jainism, one Pudgal can occupy one space point, and then you can have numerous being added and added and added and added on top of each other. Okay? And then I said that dharma and adharma occupy the entire Lokakash. So that is, yeah. So the answer now, this is the answer to the enduring question of the smallest thing in universe has evolved along with humanity. This is from a Western perspective. People once thought that grains of sand were building blocks of what we see around us. Then the atom was discovered and it was thought indivisible. Then until it was revealed that protons and neutrons and electrons were indivisible. Then the scientists discovered that protons and neutrons were made up of 3 quarks each. Then you have the idea of superstring theory, which posits that all particles, instead of being point-like, are little loops of string. Then you have superstrings, singularities, and even grains of the universe could all turn out to be about the size of the Planck. So now there is a Planck length, which is 1.6 times 10, I don't know, whatever, to 35 to the power of 35 or whatever. The number 16 preceded by 34 zeros and a decimal point, okay? Not that it's an incomprehensibly small scale that is implicated in various aspects of physics. The Planck length is far and away too small for any instrument to measure. So this is from a Western theory. And they can't, they're just sort of postulating it. You never know, okay, Planck length theory, there might be something tinier. So this is how it works. So for example, a candle chip, so you know, when you have two flames, and then you join the two flames become one flame. But the minute you move the candles away, the two flames become two flames. So this is how they occupy. They sort of they don't merge. They still maintain their own identity, but they become like this. And then you separate them. They take their own identity with them. So the next one is nano, okay? So here the reference is to anu or paramanu, which is called parmanu, the smallest particle of Pudgal. So Pudgal ma, what they describe as Pudgal, and the smallest particle is called anu. The elementary unit of matter is extremely small compared to atom in today's science and is indivisible and occupies one space point or pradesh, a subtle constituent part in whose case it is not possible to subdivide any further. A space unit's pradesh is measured as space occupied by one atom. Now, you know, ignore the word atom as in the Western thing. I'm only using atoms because I didn't know, I mean, I could have used quarks or Plancks or whatever. Yet it is possible for an infinite number of atoms to occupy one space unit or pradesh. We just discussed about that. Okay, it is possible to do that. So this is now, so this is number 11. Okay?
Can I just ask?
Yeah.
And,
Should I go back?
yeah.
Yeah.
And
Go on.
that occupation is always in the same time. We're not talking about in a different time.
No, it can occupy at the same time.
Okay.
And the reason why you need to understand is that apne jyare born thai, you know, the question people ask him, why are some people born disabled? Why are some people born with certain abilities, extra abilities? Some people are born with certain less abilities. I mean, it's only relative. But so when we come to do that, you will understand why this thing works the way it does. Okay? Because when I come to the other verses from 20 onwards, in fact, I'm going to give you homework today, if I have time. So, but you need to go with that homework, you need to think about it. So, loka kase vagahaha. Okay? These substances, the media of motion and rest, time, the souls and matter are located in the space of the universe or lokakash. So basically what it is saying is these all occupy this space called lokakash. The space outside the universe has no substance other than space. So this, you know, that whole structure, any bar niche space that's called alok akash, ema nothing can exist. And lok akash is defined because it has dharmashtikai, this medium of motion, and the medium of being stationary. That is why it is called lok akash. Lok means to observe, where things are observable, things happen. Alok means where things do not happen. Lok means to perceive or observe. All substances are self-supporting, but akash acts as a boundary. Akash itself has no support for itself, but it is so vast, it is self-supporting. Now, there is this whole debate. If you read all the tikas, you know, and quite a few I've read, and there's this whole debate. Okay, you know, all these other things are being supported by lokakash. Okay, it's acting like a container. So, who holds a container? And they are saying that the container itself is so vast that it doesn't need to be held, and the container itself is defined by what is held by it. So, you know, dharma, adharma, they are all being held in this container. That is what defines a container. It's not a physical entity as the way we think of a container. The area where the four substances reside is called Lokakash. And the next one is Dharma Dharmayo Krutsune. Kritsune. The media of motion and rest pervade the entire universe space. Both coexist without interference. Their units penetrate each other without any resistance. So, this is all extremely scientific. I know it's really sort of, you think, why are we all learning this? But this is very important. So, the media of motion and the medium of rest, they all exist. Now, the question arises, so the one tika was saying, okay, so આપણે આમથી move થાય છે ને આમથી આ stop કરે છે, so at one stage, will it not just block each other? It doesn't work like that. So if this thing is moving, it will move through this and it will go that way. And if this thing is stopping, it will stop here and it will not move. This is how Dharmashtika and Adharmashtika work. They intermingle, but they do not interfere with each other. They do not take it on each other's qualities. It's like sugar in water, okay? So when you mix sugar in water, the water itself without sugar is normal water. Then you put sugar, it sweetens. You add a bit of salt, the taste changes. It's not visible, but if you were to separate it, you can still separate it. You can still get water on its own and you can still get sugar and salt. So this is how this thing works. Are you clear or confused? So this is what this is. Okay, their units penetrate each other without any. So they exist. All these things exist. Right. Eka Pradesh Dishu Bhajya Pudgalam. So the matter of Pudgal particles occupy one space to we discussed this. The entire cosmic space is densely packed with diverse and infinite times infinite subtle and gross clusters of matter. So this is where the subtle, so we are all gross. Okay, it is possible for an infinite number of atoms to occupy one space unit or pradesh. So we talked about this. If you are not clear, just stop me. Don't look so dazed.
Actually, you know on that last slide it said about being the entire cosmos is densely packed. So at this point in time in our science, you know, we kind of think there's whole areas which we don't really know what's there. So does that mean that Jainism is saying actually there is something there that's...
Yeah.
So like at the moment they're sort of postulating there's dark matter, but we don't really know.
Yeah.
So it is saying that there is something. Okay.
It is saying that. Yeah. And also in Jain cosmology, you know, the area which is the middle region, it's supposed to be quite vast. Okay. So if you look at our Milky Way, which is just our galaxy, and then there are so many other galaxies out there, and that is just the observable part of the universe which we can observe with our own microscope and our own scientific whatever measurements. There are bits of the universe which are so far away that we've not even observed. You know, there is a lot of argument, okay, how do you connect Jain cosmology to Western science? You cannot connect, because Jain cosmology measurements, they talk about the space that they talk about, this Lokakash, is so vast that I think even the mathematical instruments would sort of give up, because they talk about khabani ketla sagaro pam ne ketlu, it just goes on, the numbers are just huge. Okay, so the soul inhabits from 1 to innumerable space points in the Lokakash. The soul is an extended substance with innumerable units which contract and expand to fit the body determined for by its karmic body. So this is what happens to us. કે આપણો જે karmic body હોય ને ઈ પ્રમાણે આપણો આકાર આવે, which is called our નામ કર્મ and gotra karma. Okay, so this is what happens, and depending on the size, it can contract, it can expand, it can become vast, it can become really tiny. Amoeba hoy to MI soul hoy, going up to dinosaurs. MI soul hato. The soul's units are indivisible, non-detachable like Pudgal, and it does not have smell, taste, color or touch. So that answers your question. Okay, it has units, but they are indivisible. They cannot be detached like Pudgal, and they do not have smell, taste, color or touch. Pudgal does have smell, taste, color and touch. Remember, Pudgal is the only thing which has smell, taste, color or touch. Nothing else has smell, taste, color or touch. So whatever you see is Pudgal. The soul can expand to pervade the whole Lokakash, and here the innumerable units of the soul coincide one to one with innumerable units of cosmic space. So that answers your, Rajesh, your question. That what happens is when the small soul expands, it connects with all the Pradeshis in the universe, and it connects with them, and that is when you experience this whole vastness. જ્યારે કેવલ જ્ઞાન થાય ને ત્યારે. The medium of motion, rest, space, and matter do not obstruct the soul's occupation, neither do they lose their identity. So while the soul is floating around somewhere in the whole cosmos, the medium of motion, rest, space, and matter, the other Pudgals, they do not interfere. They just do their own business. Okay? For example, you know that different roses have different smells. Yeah? One rose flower will have a different distinctive smell, another rose will have different. So for example, if you go to the Harrods perfume section hall, you know, you get these wafts of these perfumes being sprayed all over the place. And each perfume they describe it as woody and this and that. I don't know whether they actually genuinely are or not. But there is this vast, big, massive smell, but it's a intermingling of several smells. But each smell has its own distinctive character. Similarly, flowers, when they throw out scent, has its own distinct character. Okay? A worldly soul is accompanied by karmic body, so its contraction can only occupy an innumerable part of cosmic space rather than a single space unit. The karmic body is composed of infinite times infinite atoms. So આપણું જે karman sharir છે ને, which is what we are all carrying now, it has got infinite times infinite atoms. Atoms being Pudgals, okay? So ignore that word atom as in Western point of view. Yeah? So it can occupy an innumerable part of cosmic space rather than a single space unit. So it can, even the tiniest bit of space it can occupy. If an individual soul occupies an innumerable part of cosmic space, how can infinite times infinite souls in existence, each with their own body, be accommodated in the Lokakash? And this is where your question came in. Okay, we are subtle and gross bodied. Subtle offer no resistance to each other or to gross bodied. They are able to coexist in space units. And there are more subtle bodies than there are gross bodies. Remember that. આપણે તો 84 લાખ species જ છે, or types of species. You know, there are others. Pradesh Sanhar Visprabhyam Pradipavat. The space points of a soul can change by contraction expansion, as in the case of a lamp. So what they are using here is, so this is Pradip. Pradipavat means, Pradip means light, okay? So what they are saying is, okay, for example, if we switch off the lights and I put a lamp here, it will light up this room. If you take it into a small container, it will light up the small container. It cannot light beyond that. Similarly, if you put it outside in the courtyard here, it will light up the whole courtyard. So this is how the soul works. It can expand to occupy this whole thing, or it can even go into a small container. Gati sthitiyu pragahu dharma dharmayo yu pakarah. So the functions of the media of motion and rest are to assist motion and rest respectively of the soul. Example, you know, Rajiv used the example of fish in water. So the water only acts as a catalyst. It doesn't actually it doesn't push the fish. It only acts the fish only uses it as a medium to swim through. So this is what the medium of motion and rest, this is how they work. Okay, for example, gravity only acts to get us grounded on earth. Yeah, if the gravity gave up, we'd be floating up. But in order to move, gravity doesn't help us. Any questions so far? How many of you are lost? Raise your hands. Okay, what bit are you lost about?
I think there's a lot I'm taking in, and I think most bits I understand. It's just trying to take it all in all at once.
So can I suggest something? Don't take it in, okay? Just accept, okay, there is this thing which is medium of motion. Accept that there is this thing of medium of rest. We have not seen the vastness of space. We have not even seen ourselves, okay? આપણે આપણા સેલ્ફને નથી ઓળખતા તો આપણે આખી યુનિવર્સને ક્યારે ઓળખવા બેસવાના હતા? So let's focus on the self. So we need to focus on the self. So all I'm trying to say is that our soul has this ability to occupy the tiniest of space and the largest of space. That is what all these things say. How medium of motion works and how medium of rest works, that is all I'm trying to do is trying to explain to you how that these things actually exist. Do not think in terms of Western science. Think in terms that there are the subtle forces which work. Okay, as I mentioned, when Albert Einstein was observing light, and he said that how is light traveling through a vacuum to Earth? There must be something which is allowing it to move from the sun or wherever it is coming from to the Earth. It is moving through something. And that something is, he called it ether. I call it thermosticai. But to tell you, I'm not a scientist and I'm going to sit here with my electron microscope and trying to prove it to you. So do not even get into this thing, hase ke nahi hoy, ache. Okay, because this is, our comprehension is only so much. Western comprehension is still on the voyage of discovery. This was written by people who had seen Kevali Prabhu, yeah? So the function of space is to provide accommodation to all substances. The units of thermosticai, a thermosticai coalesce with units of cosmic space. There's mutual cooperation. Similarly, soul and matter are also accommodated. So it keeps on repeating itself. Okay, basically everything is accommodated in this lokakash. They intermingle with each other, yet they retain their own identity. So if nobody offers resistance to anybody else, they all are able to carry on with their own business. Yeah. We only think in terms of obstruction because we have gross bodies. So આપણે car લઈને જાતા and if somebody blocks our car, then that's an obstruction. But if our car was made of subtle particles, I don't know if you see science fiction movies, and you know how those bodies just disintegrate into little particles and they all disappear. This is obviously computer tricks, but this is how these things work, that it just disintegrates and it moves and then it gathers again and it continues in its own sort of journey. So now I come to the important part. So અત્યાર સુધી તો it was બધું technical. So when we were looking at chapter 2, when we looked at soul, we said soul na bhav are opshamic, okay, which is subsidence of karmas. Shaik, which is destruction of karmas. Kshayopshamik, which is mixture of some karmas are subsided, some karmas have come up. And Odaic, which is resulting from the manifestation of karma. So we are all Odaic, okay? We are all Odaic in the sense that we are all experiencing the fruits of our karma. And Parinamic, which has got nothing to do with karmas, but what manifests naturally. Okay? So Parinam hoy, for example, the sun is going to rise tomorrow, that is natural. Our skin is going to feel, we hope that sun, in this country the sun never rises. But to feel the warmth of the sun, that is parinamic. And I guess if you live in a nice warm country, that is your karma. So it is these 5 types of bhav that constitute the nature of the soul. That is to say, whether a soul is worldly or emancipated, its modes are characterized by one of these 5 types of bhav. All the emancipated souls are possessed of just 2 types of bhav, okay, kshayic and parinamic. That means when you are emancipated, all your karmas have been destroyed, so kshay thai gaya. And parinamic, which is the natural occurrence, when you get emancipated, your body, karma, you can actually experience the whole universe. Yeah. So this was from our second, on things. So there are 5 types of bodies which go with you. This is Odaric, Vaikriya, Aharak, Tejas and Karman. Okay? So I'm going to explain this to you. So the gross body is Odaric. what we see, what we all are, we are odaric. Which is આપણી જે ગમે તે bodies that you see, anything which is made up of pudgals, that is odaric. Visible bulky body made from clusters of pudgals born through a womb or agglutination, which is basically, you know, how an egg is made. Okay. The protean body is made from clusters of pudgal with superpowers. So this can only happen or for example, you hear of people being able to walk on water. You hear of people who are able to float in air. You hear of people who are able to exert extreme willpower on somebody. This can only come with superpowers, and superpowers can only come if your soul no transformation at Luthio in a toj. Okay. The conveyance body aharak is made up of auspicious particles pure and normally possessed by an elevated soul. So this is the conveyance body, which is aharak body. Okay, so these are the bodies that we have. Tejas is a body we all possess, and we come with it, which allows digestion and gives glow. This is a fiery body. Okay, so for example, when an egg is fertilized by a sperm, within 45 minutes it starts multiplying. When that happens, it has to take in food. Okay. Now, when it starts taking in food, it is because of Tejas body that it allows it to digest that food and start making, to start transforming itself into a being. So, you know, then gradually hands and legs and head and everything will start forming. Karman body is made up of clusters of pudgal, seed from which all bodies are grown by the soul. So Karman body is which determines how this body is going to grow. Yeah, so this you need to be very clear, and I will repeat this next week again. But this is something which is very important. Okay, so Sharira Vanaman Manha Prana Panaha Pudgalam. So the function of matter is to form the basis of the body and the organs of speech and mind and respiration. So this is what matter does. So this is the important bit. Forget about this space and whatever. Matter forms your body. So it's like clusters bhega thai, and then they say, okay, bau ડાયો તો લાસ્ટ ભૂમાં, so આપણે આને કંઈક સારું શરીર આપીએ. So then they decide, okay, હવે આવી રીતે body form થશે. And so when your parents conceive you, this is what Karman Sharir will decide. The Tejas Sharir will kick in based on the Karman Sharir. So sometimes Tejas Sharir એટલું kicking not થાય, so people have digestive issues. ઘણાનું over digestion થઈ જાય, so they are permanently hungry. So it all varies on the type of karmic body that you carry. Yeah. Whatever a soul possesses, whether speech, organ, respiratory system or mind, is a result of interaction with matter. So anything that you do, whether you breathe, whether you eat, whether you, whatever you do, the subtlest thing is because of matter. Breathing in and out and breath itself is made of matter. Similarly, our mind and psychic mind is also due to matter. Okay, so we have two types of mind. We have a psychic mind and we have a normal mind. The normal mind thinks, the psychic mind actually experiences. Yeah, both of them are made of matter, and the ability to benefit the soul or to be a hindrance is also due to pudgal. Birth and death are also due to pudgal. તમારું જન્મ ને મરણ થાય એ પૂતગલ ને હિસાબે જ થાય છે. Underlying it is karmic body. I know you are going to ask me a question, how is that possible? This is again, so આયુ કર્મ will decide કે તમે કેટલું જીવશો. Okay, it will determine, but it is because of pudgal ke something will appear and something will disappear. Therefore, the impact on soul by virtue of its interaction with Pudgal can be considered upkar of Pudgal. So, Pudgal does a favor to the soul. Okay, upkar here is a very interesting word, because they say actually, so it's in the next verse. They say that upkar is like આપણે કહીએ ને કે આણે મારા પર ઉપકાર કર્યો. That means this person actually was benevolent to me, or he did me a favor. Here, upkar is not talking about favors. It is just saying that whether good or bad, it just allows things to happen to the soul. So that is what Pudgal does.
Does that mean that this, I know we shouldn't think about that in the Western
No,
way,
think
but
about it. You have to think in Western terms because that's what we are educated.
does that mean that the soul enters the body at the point of fertilization? Because then only it can determine the
Within
karmic
what they
body.
say, according to Jain theory, within 45 minutes of fertilization, or 45 minutes, the soul enters the body. Yeah. So in the Hindu philosophy, when somebody dies, they have like Ter Divasudhi, where they say the soul floats around in the sky. Jainism says that the minute you die, within 45, sorry, no, it's not even 45 minutes, I think it's 48 seconds, sorry. Yeah, sorry, 45 minutes is too long.
Within 48 seconds.
Within 48 seconds, it's already taken birth. And so when a soul is, an egg is fertilized, within 48 seconds, it's already starting, it's become alive. The soul has already entered another, whatever.
तब फिर उनके बाद कोई गुजर गया तब फिर क्या आत्मा ने शांति आप जो
I think it's more for our peace. Because it's a
Well,
you know,
fascinating, you know.
no, I know, but it's because the people દુઃખી કોણ હોય? If somebody dies, જે મરી ગયા હોય તે દુઃખી તે થોડા હોય. એ લોકો દુઃખ અહીંયા ભોગવીને મર્યા હોય ઘણા, okay? ઘણા આમ happy એ મરી ગયા હોય in the sense કે they had a lovely death. દુઃખી હોય કે people who are behind because you missed that soul, okay? So એ લોકો માટે થઈને એ લોકો કે આત્માને શાંતિ આપજો. So it gives us a bit of comfort કે wherever that person is happy. But in real fact, you and I are not going to be able to determine what happens to that soul. એનો તમારી સાથે relationship હતું for whatever number of years, it has done its relationship, it has moved on. That is why they say કે મરણના ટાઈમે you need to be very clear કે તમારા ભાવ કેવા છે, because જો તમારા ભાવ બગડેલા હોય તો you will have connection with that thing or that person again and again and again and again. When you read Parshvanath's story, that is what some of these stories tell us. કે ઘડે ને ઘડે Kamat was taking birth because he had this relationship with Parshvanath Prabhu. કે you know આણે મારી સાથે કંઈ ખોટું કર્યું તો એટલે every time he would keep on doing bad things, and again it would never get, he would still feel more angry, and then when he would die again he would sort of, that's what happens. But when we do the karma theory, it's fascinating. You will see how this whole falls into place. So the function of matter is also to contribute to sensuous pleasure, suffering, life and death of living beings. So it can have a positive effect and it can have a negative effect. Positive effect means that, for example, તમે બધા બેઠા છો, matter has allowed your hearing, okay, you got good hearing, matter has allowed you to see, you got good sight, matter has allowed you to comprehend. I know you are a bit lost at this moment, but it has allowed you to comprehend. This is what matter has done. So this is a positive effect કે તમે ધર્મનું સાંભળો છો. Matter will have a negative effect, for example, when you feel really lazy and say, મારે હવે chain class માં નથી જવું. That is a negative effect. Yeah. The term here, again, so here is where they say, pagrashcha. So the term upkar is again used, which means benevolent, but here it means both positive and negative impact of pudgal. So basically that's what it does. So now this is your homework. So I want you to look at this verse, parasapara graho jivanam. Okay? What does it mean? How does it impact our life? How does matter work here? You know the pudgals we talked about? How does it work here? You can take photos with your phones, you can, but next week I'm going to ask you. It is perhaps the singular most important verse in the whole of Jain religion.
To memorize it.
Now, when I asked you the question, okay, why are we talking about dead things? And then Rajesh answered, because in order to know what is living. Okay? Dead things are equally, in Jain Dharma, they are given equal importance to living things. So all these matter, Pudgal, whatever, has been given importance. So if you can see, we started off with Dharmashtikaya, Pudgalishtikaya, how these Pudgals work, where they occupy, what happens, how vast the space is, the infinity, whether you can count it or you can't count it, how many space points there are. This is all in the realm of things which is based on faith. Okay, we cannot empirically prove it because science itself has not empirically proven it, and science itself is on a voyage of discovery. But that is gradually coming to what we are talking about, which is ourselves. You see how cleverly this whole chapter has been designed? You're talking about dead things, and then you talk about living things. So this is why I brought this up, and I want you to think about it. Okay? And don't run away next week, otherwise I'll phone you and ask you questions.